All right, how are you? YouTube. Good afternoon from Kigali, Rwanda. How are you today? I am here. It's almost about 1 p.m. here in Kigali. Let me go ahead and put my usual in the chat here. Then pin the message. Okay, perfect. So I'm having my afternoon smoothie. This is what I'm drinking. It doesn't look pretty, I know. But what it is bananas, about a pint of blueberries, a bunch of almond milk, and then I add what they call tea masala, which is like a Rwandan mix, or maybe not Rwandan, but an East African mix of spices, kind of like a chai spice mix, pretty similar, if not the same thing. And then I put like about a 1 inch piece of fresh turmeric, which is why it has that weird greenish brown color, which is sort of strange, but it's delicious. And that's my lunch for the day. Um, so I wanted to get into this particular item that we're talking about today. Is this a good freelance writing client? When I started my freelance writing business, um, I got really stuck on trying to figure out how do you determine who is a good freelance writing client and who are the people I should probably skip. And there's some things that I learned in the process. Now, just to give you a little bit of background on myself, my name is Halana Black. I'm a freelance writer. I mostly do freelance writing, doing content marketing materials for mostly tech companies. And with the tech companies, I write things like blog posts, customer case studies, white papers, all sorts of things. And I've been doing it for 8 years. When I started off, I was literally writing stuff for like $9 a piece, blog posts for $9 a piece. And I was excited to do it because it was like a step I felt at the time, 8 years ago. This was a step in the right direction in creating my business and building a life of freedom. And of course, $9 for about 600 words, that is not a life of freedom at all. Nowadays, 8 years later, at the very least, I make about $500 for about an 800 word blog post. That's for if it's, if the content is really quite simple. For more complicated pieces, I've been paid as much as $1,500 for a blog post. So it's really possible for you to make a business on the low end, making about $3,000 a month, $3,000 to $5,000 a month, all the way up through six figures. So it all depends on what it is that you want. You can make this a part-time business. You can make this a full-time business. I also travel. For the last 5 years, I've taken my freelance writing business on the road. I've lived in 7 different countries. And right now, I live in the country of Rwanda. I've been here for about 2 years, and I will be leaving here in the next few months. So that's that. That's my background. But what I wanted to talk about today is how do you determine who's a good freelance writing client and who isn't? Now, I should qualify what I'm saying with a couple of statements. I don't use things like Upwork. I don't use job boards. I rarely ever um, use job postings to be able to find my clients. Reason is because most of those job postings don't pay much. Um, yeah, they don't pay much, and I find that using a more proactive approach to marketing to companies, and I'm talking about big corporations. I market to big corporations to let them know that I'm available for services. I have a great portfolio of work, and I actually have something valuable to be able to offer. So, a lot of you who are in the low paying pool, the $25 a post pool, you're making $100, maybe 150. For me, that's not really enough money. And there's more money to be made out there. You just have to know where to be able to go to get it. And so I'm going to give you a few hints on where you can go or how you can start to figure out how to find these clients. So I work with corporations, I just said. Most of the time, what I do is I figure out what my particular niche is. And for me, I work with tech companies. Tech could literally mean anything. Tech is across, can be, health, finance, um, software as a service. The retail space has a lot of um, tech products, cybersecurity, a ton of things that you can look to into tech. But there's also all sorts of other, telecommunications you can look into, all sorts of clients that there's educational technology, all sorts of companies out there. And so you need to be able to decide what your particular niche is. And what I do is I find lists of companies on the internet, very, very simple. Find lists of companies on the internet, and then I do my research. I take my research onto LinkedIn. What I do on LinkedIn is I make connections with the content marketing folks over there on LinkedIn, and I build a relationship with them. Now, when I'm making my list of companies, you got to be able to figure out. You got to be able to figure out whether or not this is a company that you should even be bothered with in the first place. And so, number one, it could depend on the quality of the list that you're looking at. Um, One of the things that you want to do when you look at a particular company and figuring out whether or not they are good enough for you to be able to work with is you just look at the company's website. What does the company's website look like? The first thing I like to look at is figuring out whether or not this company has, do they produce written materials? Do they have a company blog? Do they produce white papers? Do they have ebooks? Do they have customer case studies? If you go onto a website and you find that they don't necessarily put any effort into producing written marketing materials, more than likely it's going to be a company that's not going to really need your services, or if they do need your services at some point, then they may not really value what it is that you offer. So if I don't see some sort of like a resource page, you might see at the top of the website, it might say resources, and there might be something that says about the company. If it's not at the top, then it's certainly at the bottom. You'll see a space where they're just sort of lists all the things that they produce. If you do like PR, you might be looking for like public relations materials, like press releases and things like that. Um, so you want to know, do they produce written materials? Next, sometimes with some companies, you may want to look at how much revenue they produce in a year. I like to see at least $1 million in revenue. But as of late, I've been doing better with companies that have at least a $10 million in revenue point, at least $10 million in revenue. How do you find this information? This information is usually for the bigger companies, it's usually available like in an annual report. You can find it on the company website. You may do some LinkedIn research and find it there. But usually this for public companies, this information is usually available. You may have to do a little digging. Um, but yeah, $10 million in revenue, I think, gives you a good idea of the types of companies you can start to look at. The next ones are companies that are newly funded. Now, this is because I generally work in the tech space. Um, but companies that receive venture capital funds, if they get some sort of a big few $1 million in funds to be able to build their company, I find that these are companies, like I just said in number one, do they produce written materials? They may not, these companies may not have written materials, they may not have anything. So, for those of you who are a little bit more advanced, this might be attractive for you to go to them and you can pitch your content strategy creation services. Some of them, the founders, might want somebody who can help them with producing thought leadership content, like going on LinkedIn and producing articles there on LinkedIn, or maybe producing things for their website or for a company newsletter. Usually, because the founders of these companies who are getting venture capital funds, the the companies are often quite small, and they may or may not have a person that works in marketing in the company. But if you present yourself well, you can often convince them. Um, I don't even want to say convince them, but if they know that marketing is important, if they know that it's something that they want to be able to get them into, if you present yourself professional enough, they will be able to say, okay, we can put $10,000 to the side for the year. And, and then you can sort of have a discussion on what that $10,000 or more will pay for in the next 6 months to a year. So that's a tip for those of you who are a little bit more advanced. And then you want to be able to pick a company that has ongoing content needs. There's nothing really more frustrating than working with a company that says, we have one blog post for you right now. Um, we'll see what we can do later. I tend to want companies that have ongoing content needs. And especially for me, because I've been doing this for so long, I already know that I know the work. If they tell you that they only have like one blog post, it's because they often don't trust that you know how to do the work. I tend to skip those people. If you can't see, from the get go that I'm great at what I do and you need me, then you can go and work with somebody else. I'm good. Um, but if they have ongoing content needs, then they are willing to say, okay, well, we need 2 to 4 blog posts a month. Um, we have a need for bigger content pieces, like we might need like a quarterly um, customer case study or a quarterly white paper. And then we want to break these pieces into blog posts. And that's really nice. That's nice for you as a freelance writer because, it helps you with planning out your income several months in advance. But also, it's really great for the company because you get to learn their products and services better. I tend to work with a lot of software companies, and some of their software tends to be a bit complicated. And it's a pain in the ass for some of these marketing people to have to explain every time they bring on a new writer, trying to bring them up to speed onto what it is that their software actually does. So if you talk to them and say, hey, I'm really willing to learn the software, and I'm really great at this. Um, when we work on more than just one piece at a time, if we have like a retainer, a month to month agreement, um, you're much more likely to be able to learn the software or whatever it is that they're selling, products and services, better, and they don't have to work with a new person all the time. So that's what I have for you today. I hope that that is helpful for those of you who are thinking about what it looks like to pick out a quality freelance writing client. You don't want to put a lot of energy into companies that um, You don't want to put a lot of energy into companies that are more than likely not going to give you what it is that you want. You may be excited about working with them. They may look like fun. I know like some of you are like beauty writers and things like that. And that's awesome. You should absolutely do the things that are most interesting to you. But the type of freelance writing that I like to be able to get people into is working with larger corporations that have big budgets to be able to pay people who have really great writing skills, who can just take a project and run with it and get the stuff done in time. And then if you want to be able to write other things, if you want to be able to write, do travel writing. Travel writing is great, but they don't. A lot of these magazines, travel writing magazines and websites, they really don't pay much of anything. So you're often doing it because it's something. They like travel writing. They have a really great network of people, but they don't pay much. And so for me, I'm not motivated. I'm just not that motivated to do that sort of work. But I know other people are, and so that's you can do that. You can do all of that work, but you need to be able to have a foundation in your freelance writing business where you know that you'll get a certain amount of money. Then you'll have time, space, and energy to be able to do all those other fun writing things. Okay, so number one, I asked, do they produce written materials? Next, do they have at least $1 to $10 million or in revenue, maybe even more? Go for companies that are newly funded. These are companies that are getting venture capital funds. They often need people that can help the founders with writing thought leadership content for LinkedIn and other places. And then these are companies that often have ongoing content needs. So it's not just a one off blog post, one off project. You want companies that um, they know that they need content on a monthly basis. And you want to be on that retainer contract, giving them the content that they need on a monthly basis. All right? So have a great day. Please like, share, and subscribe this broadcast. Share it with your freelance writer friends. If you just have a quick question, you can put it on the bottom, and I will see if I can do a video about it in the future. If you have a question where you want like one-on-one focused attention on your freelance writing business, I'm happy to do that as well. I do one-on-one sessions. You can click on the link in the description or just go to halanablack.com/freelance writing coach, and you'll be able to set up your session there. So have a great day. Peace.